Breaking tonight, new evidence that Russia is taking its military campaign in the Mideast to a dangerous new level. The Kremlin not only increased the number of airstrikes over the weekend, but reports suggest that Russian ground troops are now streaming into Syria as well. And it is not just troops crossing the border. These BM-30 rocket launcher systems are considered extremely accurate and extremely lethal. And 4 of them are now in Syria under Russian control. And while Russia has been insisting that a large ground offensive is not likely, one U.S. official told Fox News, quote, "You don't bring that kind of stuff unless you plan to use it." Colonel Tony Shaffer is a retired CIA-trained intel operative and a senior fellow at the London Center for Policy Research. And Pete Hegseth is a Fox News contributor and an Iraq and Afghanistan combat war veteran. Great to see you both. Let me start with you, Colonel, on this.
Sure.
What we've seen now in terms of the Russian effort is similar to what we saw last week. We'll put the map on the board from the Institute for the Study of War, where you can see the targets. Here's what you need to know, folks. See that yellow area? That's controlled by the rebels. That's where all the little red airstrikes are. All the strikes are mostly in that rebel-controlled area. See the green? That's controlled by ISIS. Two efforts there. Everything else has been focused on the rebels. So the thought, Tony, Colonel, is that they did a couple for good measure, but they're focused on getting those rebels out of there to prop up Assad. Why do we care? What does it mean to us?
Well, 2 things. First, we got to care. Ungoverned space is what ISIS has thrived in. So as much as it may be disdainful to the president, and he acts like a petulant child because Putin all of a sudden is going against his best laid plans, they need to stabilize Syria. That is what is in our interest. With that said, let us not be fooled for a minute. Putin is doing this for Putin's own interests. If you will, it's, I think, almost a Damascus pact. This is bringing back the old Warsaw Pact. And yes, Megan, absolutely. Whatever he's bringing, he's going to use. Plus, he's got his Spetsnaz on the ground, which has not been talked about. Plus, he's got electronic warfare units, which are moving in to do the counter messaging and counter propaganda. They are dead serious about going in and doing, frankly, some of the things we should have done a year ago.
So Putin's basically going to have control, essentially, of Syria soon. And we're not. We're being forced out of the Middle East, which is the thing that seems to concern most analysts, Pete, that it's not just that our adversary, somebody who's an adversary, in the eyes of many, is gaining more power. We're losing it.
Yeah, and we've got a president who says our interests somehow overlap with President Putin's, and he wants to work with him when our goals are fundamentally misaligned. We have a president whose strategy is to hope that Putin gets stuck in a quagmire, hope that ISIS is beaten back and they fall under the weight of themselves, hope that the rebels make advances, hope that Assad doesn't maintain control, with no chips on the table, no ability to affect it, with a rebel training program that is not only not effective, but effectively handing weapons over to the bad guys. We are literally completely on our heels, not even leading from behind, not leading at all. And Putin is taking advantage to reassert Russia's influence in that region, which we haven't seen for over 40 years. We're seeing a geopolitical shift in power being undertaken. So it's not necessarily that Putin's strong, it's that he's seizing the mantle of international leadership and in some ways legitimacy because of what he's able to project with troops on the ground. He's going to affect the outcome there much more than we are right now, just because he's got the guys on the ground with the boots.
Colonel, you've spoken with people at the Pentagon. It's not all bad, is it? Russia's taken out some ISIS.
Well, that's the issue. I mean, look, General Dunford said in his hearings, the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs said, look, Russia is our biggest threat on the planet. I agree with General Dunford on this completely. With that said, we have to recognize that we have been completely ineffective. And this is, Megan, we broke this story about 2 weeks ago. One of the categories of intelligence that CENTCOM's been fudging is the targeting. Some of the targets some of the targets that Putin has taken out are the ones our intelligence analysts recommended and were vetoed by the White House. So let me be very clear. As much as this is bad by the fact that Putin's going both ways, taking out the people we've trained as well as the ISIS guys, his job, as he sees it, is to stabilize an ally. His job is to do what allies do with allies, is stabilize Assad. So we're going to be sitting here on the side, as Pete said, kind of like scratching our head. What do we do next? And we're going to have to be concerned about 2 years from now when Putin is the one sitting in Egypt with President al-Sisi saying, hey, we're your best friend. We need to be concerned about this.
Because people look at the situation and say, well, Syria, it's not exactly like we were BFFs with them. So if it's going, to hell in a handbasket, why should the American people get that concerned? There are real reasons for them to.
Well, there are very real reasons for them to. If we're not involved and we're not leading, somebody else is, and in this case, it is Vladimir Putin. And Vladimir Putin doesn't care what we think, doesn't want a strong America. And the axis of America, Iran, a Shia-led Iraq at this point, and Russia and Syria. That's a bad axis that doesn't have our interest in mind, doesn't want to advance certainly the things that we believe in, and they're just going to spread that influence. And ISIS is taking advantage of that. They're okay with ISIS being where it is, because ISIS, if they can beat back the rebels and maintain Assad's legitimacy and power there, they've got a balance of power with ISIS kind of doing its thing that they're okay with, and that in no way is okay for us.
I'm glad they took that video down, because that was downright terrifying. I don't know what we were watching, but it was just freaking me out as we listened to you talk. Colonel, I'll give you the last word on the implications here and what the United States needs to do, in your view.
When? I mean, come on. We have the greatest military on the face of the earth. We've chosen to not even half-step. We've chosen to basically allow for this situation to develop. And President Obama got caught with his pants down. That's why I think he looked so frustrated the other day. He's been playing both ends against the middle. He wants ISIS to destabilize Assad so Assad will fall. While at the same time, he's trying to do things to destroy ISIS so it doesn't get too out of control. He can't have it both ways. You have to figure out what we're going to do first, what our specific objectives are going to be, and we have to do it. He's not willing to do that.
You think he was trying to bide his time and see what happened between Assad's people and ISIS before the U.S. did anything significant?
Megan, we are now the junior varsity.
Yeah,
bottom
that's
line.
Right. He still hopes
we're
that he
now
can
the
sit
junior
down.
varsity. Great.
Yes, he still hopes he can sit down and talk to Vladimir Putin and figure it out.
That's right.
We are.
That's right.
We're being played.
Wow, that's depressing. Great to see you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there was a junior varsity all along, just it wasn't ISIS.